It's an arduous hike. It takes several hours, and they took him to La Higuera, where he was placed in the little mud-walled schoolhouse there.
They had put Che in the place where I worked, and they guarded him in a very responsible manner.
Curious, local school teacher Julia Cortez asks to see the prisoner in her classroom.
He was an extraordinarily handsome man. He wasn't the man depicted to us. Black, ugly, evil. His eyebrows, his nose, his mouth, all of his features were perfect. I then went to my home and brought back a small bowl of soup, which I brought to his cell. No one stopped me from doing so. He drank it with pleasure and thanked me. He said it was worth gold.
Captain Gary Prado also speaks to Che.
I asked him, why didn't you give up a few weeks ago? Why didn't you just disband your guerrilla? Where would I go, he said. And that was his real drama. He had no place to go.
Back in Valle Grande, CIA agent Felix Rodriguez and the other Bolivian commanders received the news.
That evening we celebrated. I bought a couple of bottles of scotch and they celebrated.
The next day, Felix Rodriguez and Bolivian Colonel Zenteno arrive in La Higuera.
As you enter the room here on the left side, he was tied down in the floor, and in front of him was the dead body of 2 Cubans. He has lost. He looks like a beggar. You feel sorry, pity at the way he looked. I mean, he was a total disaster.
Colonel Zenteno tries to question Che.
Colonel Zenteno was the one who did the talking. I just stood there with the other officer, and he started asking questions to Che, and Che would not answer him. Until Zenteno got mad and said, well, you are a foreigner, you came to my country, the least you can do is answer me. And he would not answer him. So he left the room.
Felix sends a message that Che Guevara has been captured. The message has to be routed via CIA stations in various South American nations. It will take hours for the message to arrive in Washington. Felix returns to the schoolhouse to see if Che will speak with him.
Whenever I tried to touch tactical interest to us, how many people he had with him, where he had come from, he will smile to me and say, you know, I cannot answer that. A lot of time, to be honest with you, I was not even paying attention to what he was saying. My mind was running the image that I have seen him so many times next to Mao Zedong and the Soviet leaders and the uniform and the way he looked at that point in time. I mean, it was quite a striking situation, a unique situation, really.
Felix takes Che outside and poses with him for a photograph.
And at that point in time, I felt that, you know, his life was going to be spared.
A short time later, gunshots ring out from the schoolhouse.
I thought they had shot Che. So I run back, I open the door, and he looked at me, I look at him, and then I run to the next door, and then I saw Willie, who was, you know, just dying at that point in time. And then the soldier who shot him told me, the Capitan, he tried to escape, which is ridiculous. I mean, he received order to execute him.
Later that morning, a message comes in from Bolivian High Command in La Paz to the highest-ranking officer on site.
Colonel Zenteno was in the field, all the captains were with him, and there were only 2 lieutenants and myself. I had the rank of captain in La Higuera, so they called me.
The Bolivians had a numbered code.
We knew from advance that 500 was Che, 600 was dead, and 700 was to keep him alive. So I asked them to repeat it, that they confirmed there was 500, 600 from the High Command, and that's why I received the order 500, 600.
Colonel Zenteno returns to La Higuera. Felix talks to him about reversing the order.
Colonel, there are orders from your command to eliminate the prisoner. The order from my government is to try to keep him alive at all costs, and we have helicopters and mobility to move him out of here to Panama.
But the Bolivians won't back down. Che is too much of a liability. They want him dead.
Very early, we heard the radio news that Che had been captured and that he was dead.
Felix is approached by Julia Cortez, the school teacher.
Julia Cortez came to where I was and said, Mi Capitan, when are you going to shoot him? He said, Senora, why do you say that? She showed me the radio and said, the radio is giving the information that he already died from combat wounds. So at that point in time, I thought there was no point waiting any longer.
With no word from Washington and Bolivia's president demanding Che's death, Felix decides to proceed with the execution order.
It was their decision, their war, and he attacked their country. So it was their responsibility, and I should not interfere with that and let history continue its course.
Only a day after Che Guevara's capture, the Bolivian government orders his death. News reports falsely claim he has been killed in battle. Held in a cell with the dead bodies of his comrades, Che Guevara awaits his fate. 12:30 p.m. on October 9th, CIA agent Felix Rodriguez enters the schoolhouse.
He was sitting in the bench. I stood in front of him and said, "Commander, I'm sorry, I tried my best." He turned white like a piece of paper. But he composed himself and said, "It's better this way. I should have never been captured alive." And I asked him, if I can send a message, do you want anything for your family? And then he changed and said, "And if you can, tell my wife to remarry and try to be happy."
Che stood up. He thought that Rodriguez was going to kill him then and there. Felix told me that he then embraced Che as a gesture to a kind of noble enemy, said goodbye, left the room. Rodriguez went out and asked for volunteers.
Mario Turan, a young sergeant, steps forward.
Came to where he was because I knew he was to be executioner and said, "Look, don't shoot from here up, shoot from here down because he's supposed to die from combat wound."
Turan enters the cell, ready to execute the rebel leader.
When he sees Teran entering the room, he knows that this is the man that's going to kill him. You know when you look into your murderer's eyes. He knows he's about to die. When Teran came in, he said, "Shoot, coward, you're only going to kill a man. In other words, you're not going to kill my ideas." Teran fired several bursts into Che, and the first seemed to hit his arm. Che fell on the ground and bit his hand hard to avoid crying out. And then Teran finished him off with another burst, something like 9 bullets that entered his body. The fatal bullet entered his thorax, and he asphyxiated on his own blood.
Captain Gary Prado and Captain Celso Torrelio came down, and we all came into the room. And then Gary Prado said, "Mi Capitan, I think we have finished with the guerrilla in Latin America."
He wasn't even put in the helicopter, he was just tied to it. I saw it with my very